Hello, it's Richard Haggerty here, and I'd like to take a moment just to talk to you about how to relieve and remove the psychological triggers to quit smoking. You see, the thing about smoking is that the actual impulse to do the behaviour happens quite some time before you actually do the behaviour. Of course, it has to. All we're aware of, all my clients are aware of certainly, is the kind of sense of doing the behaviour. Okay, you suddenly find yourself just reaching for the cigarette or doing the behaviour, eating that cream bun, something going on, and it seems to just be happening. And there are a few reasons for this, and I want to talk about the psychological triggers that are happening in the background in what we might call your unconscious mind, in the deeper part of your mind. And there are some reasons for this, but it's really helpful, first of all, to realise that these things are snowball. They start to snowball because they start small. They start small, they start invisible, they're there in the background. And then they suddenly start to gain momentum. Now, here's the thing. The way to remove the psychological triggers fundamentally is to recognise that they're there, to recognise that there are two types. They come in, there are external triggers and there are internal triggers. And these are the things that are driving your behaviour. And actually, the way that I work with clients, we can do this very, very efficiently to help remove these in one session. But what I want to do is I want to show you how you can identify these for yourself, okay? So that you can start to change and transform almost any behaviour. Now, this should be quite interesting for you. You should be getting quite excited about this, because here's the thing. Did you know that whenever we make a decision consciously, fMRI scans show that the impulse in the brain that shows the decision was made happens sometime before we had any conscious awareness of it, which means that even from a point of view of our decisions, at some level the actual final decision is made unconsciously, and it's only later on consciously that we have some ratification of that. Okay, now it's a really, really interesting area. Okay, but as I mentioned, there's psychological triggers to quitting smoking. What do we mean by that? Okay, there are things that happen externally and there are things that happen internally inside you that cause you to smoke. Okay, whether you're smoking a cigarette, whether you want to quit vaping, whether you want to quit e-cigarettes, whether you just want to stop smoking regular cigarettes. Okay, and what it tends to boil down to are the external triggers. What are external triggers? They're the things that happen regularly at certain times of the day. Waking up, after a meal, going for a coffee, going for a walk. But also they're linked to internal triggers, because the internal psychological trigger can be something like feeling bored. And it's really interesting because when a person feels bored, they will tend to feel a little bit anxious or frustrated. They have a sense they want to get rid of that energy, and they'll tend to use the strategy that's most comfortable and simple for them. For example, smoking. Rather than quitting smoking, they'll be doing that. Why? Because the trigger was happening in the background of their mind. It was subconscious. The impulse came as something quite small. It was just a little bit of maybe boredom or frustration, but very quickly it started to snowball. Okay, so it's been shown that boredom leads to anxiety, which leads to the smoking addiction, or certainly making it very hard to stay a non-smoker. So in that sense, boredom indirectly leads to a person smoking. And therefore, we need to isolate those triggers. So here's how we're going to do it. Okay, if you want to know the things that are triggering you, always start off with the external ones. Okay, simply get a pen and paper and go through your day. At what point do you normally smoke? Do you have a cigarette when you wake up? Do you have one after a meal? Do you have one after breakfast? Do you have one at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the office? There will be very specific things that you do, okay? And yes, I know there may be some regret in there and all these kind of things, but fundamentally, you'll have a routine, you'll have a schedule of when you do that, okay? Maybe you have a few minutes and you're waiting for your loved one to come back, or maybe just at the end of the day before bed. These are the external triggers. These are kind of when there's a kind of a sense of anticipation, almost like you're looking at the clock and this is the time to do it. This is the situation to do it. Okay. Now, once you know those, well now you can be aware of the true psychological inner triggers that are driving your behavior. Because what will happen around that time, each of those times that you've identified in a typical day, there will be something that happens inside you. Could be boredom, could be a bit of anxiety, could be, you might give it some other name. You'll be telling yourself something, you'll be experiencing something inside. And that's something that you're experiencing inside. That is the psychological trigger that you need to have handled to be able to quit smoking. Okay, and that's really what we do. That's really what I do as a stop smoking expert, is to take you through that and dissolve those triggers so they don't happen anymore. And in fact, we can do it so that once you're aware of them, you don't just dissolve those triggers, but you take all that energy that was in that old behavior and start transforming it into a very powerful sense of confidence and willpower. This almost like unconscious willpower to be able to get things done, to be able to get them done much, much more easily. So how do we remove psychological triggers to quit smoking? First of all, be aware that there is a pattern throughout your day. And the external triggers, there will be the times of the day when you specifically, habitually light up, vape, smoke cannabis, whatever it is. Secondly, once you've identified those, you need to almost start to become a little bit of a detective, a little bit aware of the way you feel in each of those situations. There'll be two or three, there'll probably be a handful of feelings maximum that you're feeling, that you're aware of there. Could be confused, could be frustrated, annoyed, could be dissociated, could be vapid, could be vacant, could be bored, could be nervous, could be worried, could be fretful. Whatever they are, you want to list those down, because those are the subtle or the more extreme inner states that are driving your behavior. Okay, and once you've got those, okay, the simplest way to be able to start to be able to transform that is to put a little bit of distance in between the internal trigger that you've recognized that's paired with the external trigger. What do I mean by that? Let's say end of the day you go out and you're relaxing in the garden before bed and you're having a cigarette, and there's a kind of feeling of maybe anticipation or excitement or nervousness, or just trying to relieve the stress of the day. Okay, once you recognize that, you want to put a little bit of time in between that trigger and the behavior. How do we do that? Once you recognize the feeling inside, what you want to do is be able to sit with that. What do we mean by that? 20 to 30 seconds where you notice that feeling, pay attention to it in your body whilst you're paying attention to your breathing without trying to change it. Okay, just adding this little wedge in will start to really move you in the direction you want to go in. Okay, so to remove psychological triggers, you've got to realize that they drive your behavior. They can be quite subtle. First of all, know when this is happening with the external triggers. Secondly, break it down and identify the internal states that are coming up for you. Thirdly, start giving yourself a little wedge. Instead of automatically going and doing the behavior, sit with the feeling for 20 or 30 seconds. Start to make friends with it, because you want to quit smoking. All right, and the way to do that is to make friends with those feelings inside you, those states that your mind thinks you might have gotten from the old habit, but really you don't need that habit to feel good now.